In Japan, they're focusing a lot on details and making everything really perfect. If you really want to learn something, you have to repeat it like 100 times. They take new students who never play the instrument and then say, here is Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony. Chief conductor asked us like, hey, this is not ramen, you know. This solo should be a little bit more like somen. Try to challenge us to just change the idea about the sound.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, subscribing is the best way to support us. It helps us grow and bring you new stories from life in Japan. All right, let's jump in. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Harald in the studio. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're the principal trumpet of the Kyoto Symphony Orchestra.
Yes.
That's quite a unique position that you're holding in the orchestra. You've had a very lengthy music career that began all the way back in your home country of Norway. Aside from music, you also do a lot of sailing, which we were not planning on talking about, but maybe that'll come up too, because I'm quite curious about it.
Yeah.
But like with all our guests, I would like to go back a little bit to what brought you to Japan in the first place.
Well, I was a freelance trumpet player and also a conductor of school bands around in Norway. And at that time, it was like a little bit competitive. And I had to do all this audition to try to get a job. I tried all the open positions in Norway, in Scandinavia. I even went to England and to Switzerland, Germany. I didn't go to France, but Sweden and Denmark and everywhere. And then I happened to get a one-year contract in the Navy military, the Norwegian Navy band. And then I had all this time to practice a lot. And then this job in Japan showed up. There was an opening for Hyogo Performing Arts Center Orchestra up in Nishinomiya, Kitaguchi. So I was thinking, yeah, why not? And I just made a recording of all the required pieces. And suddenly I got an invitation to come and play in London for the second audition. And I'd never been to London, so I was thinking, yeah, why not? Just take it as a vacation and visit a friend there. So did the audition in London, and then actually during Easter holidays in Norway, I got a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning from Japan.
Wow.
Hey, Mr. Hararudo, can you come to Japan? Yeah.
And that was the beginning of it all.
Yeah, that was it. So then I ended up in Japan in 2005.
Did you have any kind of ideas or plans or thoughts about, was Japan on your radar, so to say, for potential places to take your music career? Or was this out of the blue, you saw the ad, and because you had been searching for so long, you were like, why not? Let's try.
Absolutely not expected to end up in Japan. I was just free and I wanted to try auditions everywhere. This turned out to be a kind of a hobby for me after I graduated from the academy. So then when I actually landed a job, it was like on the other side of the planet. So that was a surprise. And then all my family and all my friends said, you just have to go. There's no question. This is like a really big opportunity for having an adventure. And then I was just thinking, it's just for 2 years. That was the contract time in this orchestra.
In order to even pursue this career, you need to have this dedication for this instrument, the trumpet.
Right.
You studied that professionally as well back in Norway. When did you get interested in the trumpet, and what kind of fascinates you so much about that specific instrument?
Well, in Norway, since Second World War, we have like the school band became like a cultural institution in Norway, that all the schools have their own school band. So that was pretty unique for Norway. I don't think any other Scandinavian country has that. And then my father was actually the conductor of the school band in our hometown. So when I was 1 year old, he was conducting the band and I was conducting the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the stories I heard when I was small. So it's kind of, I just was born into this situation, I think. Didn't have any choice.
And the trumpet as an instrument itself, you could have played, I think, a wide variety of instruments on the band. Why the trumpet?
No, it's like a melodical instrument in the band, and it looks great. And all my brothers played the same instrument, all the brothers, and my father played the same instrument. This was actually a cornet, by the way. It's not a trumpet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the same.
What is the key difference?
The trumpet looks a little bit smaller, but it's actually the same length. But it sounds a little bit more round and a little bit more mellow. The sound color is a little bit different. But also this school band was something we call a brass band that comes from the old coal mine cities in England. They didn't have so many wind instruments in these cities, maybe because of the big fingers of the coal miners, the people working in the mines in England. I'm not really sure, but my city had the same kind of brass band with only brass instruments, and then the cornet was the smallest. Yeah.
So you are born into this. Your family has a musical background. You study the cornet and get very good at it. You work with the Royal Navy of Norway on their band, and suddenly you arrive in Japan. That must have been quite a change. Do you remember when you first arrived in 2005, what that experience was like for you?
I remember it like it was yesterday. I figured out where I was supposed to go from Kansai Airport. Took the limousine bus to Nishinomiya Kitaguchi Station. And I freaked out because I couldn't figure out how to get from the north side of the station to the south side. I had no clue, and all the signs at that time, as I remember, it was only Japanese. Maybe there was some English under all the Japanese, but at that time I was like really stressed out. I couldn't read the English because I was freaked out about the Japanese text. So that was the first day coming to this performing arts center in Nishinomiya Kitaguchi. So I remember this really well, and all the struggles trying to find things that I needed in my apartment.
Just to get yourself set up, basically.
Yeah. The first night I just slept on the floor. I had no idea where I could buy a futon, and I didn't understand the remote control for my air conditioner. And I turned it on, and it was heating. And this was like summer of 2005, and it was 40 degrees outside, so.
And your room heats even more, and then you don't know how to turn it off. And
So This was the first couple of days in Japan. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah.
And then I imagine you start kind of meeting the orchestra from the Performing Arts Center and kind of are introduced there. But then again, I imagine primarily a Japanese ensemble.
Yeah.
How was it like for you to come from the Navy and then suddenly be in this new environment with musicians that maybe don't speak English or you cannot necessarily communicate with directly? This
orchestra was pretty well organized, and it was half and half foreigners and Japanese people. And I think 90% of all the Japanese people could speak either English or German. So that was not a problem at work. And also all the information from the administration was in English. So basically no problem. But like where we were living up in Takarasuka, to go to the local Coop supermarket and try to find stuff, that was also a funny experience. I tried to find soap to wash things, wash the floors, or just simple soap. I think I ended up with 3 bottles of floor wax. Yes.
And then you applied that and you started washing. It's like, oh no.
Figured out pretty fast that this was not soap. Yeah. So
I think I had a very similar experience early on when I thought I was buying just laundry detergent, but I think I washed my clothes with softener. For quite a few months before I realized, this is actually just for the smell.
similar story. Yeah.
What was it like when you actually then joined your new kind of musical colleagues? The core of everything you were going to do was music and performing, but you had just come from a Navy band. I imagine the kind of music you play there, the kind of performances, the kind of marches are quite different. And suddenly being here, were there things that surprised you, or was everything kind of a natural process?
No, since I was a freelancer in Norway and in Scandinavia before I got this contract with the Navy band, I was pretty used to playing in an orchestra. So that was not so new. But the new thing, like a culture shock between music life in Norway and Japan was like, here there are no unions and kind of no rules for workers, and we just had to go with what the administration told us to do. So that was a little shock. And also the rehearsals are like really short in Norway because you're supposed to practice a lot yourself. But here the rehearsals were longer, and also before the concert there was also a long rehearsal before the concert and then the concert. And
on the same day?
The same day, and almost no break between. And this, I think, was one of the rules they tried to keep, like keep the rehearsal and the concert within 8 hours or something. So they didn't have to pay overtime. But then it makes it really hard for a trumpet player to play something really physical on the rehearsal and then play it again on the concert. So that's the biggest kind of culture shock for a trumpet player in Japan.
Would you consider these brass instruments in general to be the most demanding from the instruments that are present at the orchestra? Physically demanding?
Yeah, I think so. Trumpet and, of course, trombone and horn. If you play Mahler symphonies, the horn part is really, really hard.
So a big difference, the lack of union and the very different working environment, where here suddenly you're expected to be present and rehearse and stay around, whereas back in Norway it's probably more structured and more on your own time, or how you kind of organize yourself to come ready for the actual rehearsal.
Yeah. So here I feel they practice more in the band. But like there's other stories too. Like I have been playing in other orchestras here, like in Osaka Philharmonic. Then there many times I just play one rehearsal and then next day the concert. There's a little bit of everything.
How does that work for you as a musician then? I have no idea what needs to be rehearsed exactly and how you need to work with the other musicians together. But I imagine that playing with one group and rehearsing one time and then having the concert can make it quite difficult to have, I don't know how many people are playing, but let's say there's like 15, 20 people standing on stage next to each other to be in tune, to be kind of on the same page. Must be difficult if there's like just one common rehearsal.
Yeah. Like if you just have one rehearsal, it's something you've done many times. So, or there's like a standardized way of doing stuff and the conductor doesn't go too far away from that standard. Then you don't really need to have these long rehearsals. But most of the rehearsal is about the conductor want to do something special or something new, or he have like really deep wish of doing it with exactly this kind of sound color, and then he works a lot with that. And the symphony orchestra is everything between 50 and 120 people. So it's a lot of people who need to be on the same page, as we say.
You just mentioned that a lot of it depends on what the conductor wants to do and how he wants to interpret the music in a way. Is this something that you kind of noticed when you arrived here, that they may have different interpretation of some of the pieces, which for the most part, I imagine are classical pieces from European composers back then, and now maybe also modern composers too from all around the world. But did you see like very different approaches to the music that you were used to from back home?
And not so big difference actually, because the music we play is mostly old European classic music. So then there's like a baseline on how to do stuff. And the most conductors don't go outside this line, and they try to keep to the good old famous conductors and try to copy what they did. But there is some conductors who never studied abroad or don't listen too much to these old conductors and try to reinvent the wheel. And then that's a struggle for the orchestra sometimes. Try to set a new world record of how fast we can play or how soft we can play and stuff like that. Then we are working hard for the money. Yeah.
While we're on the topic of conductors, I've always been curious, how does it work? Because the only part of the conductor's job we really see as part of the public is when he's standing on stage and he's kind of guiding and giving signs to the different sides of the orchestra. But I always imagine that every musician in that moment is just focused on what he has to do or she has to do. Do you see what the conductor, is he really influencing the music on stage, or is everything basically already preset, so to say, for people and they know what they need to do at what moment?
Well, that's why we have the rehearsals, actually. On the rehearsals, the conductor is either showing what he wants to do with his gestures or hands or with his body language or face. And then we just try to understand that. On the concert, it's just a show, you know. Then he can just, or she can just stand there and make a good show for the audience and for the musicians or for the people sitting behind the orchestra. Many people come to the concert and they want to sit behind the orchestra just to see the face of the conductor.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So in theory, you'd be able to perform without him standing or her standing on stage on the actual performance day.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But of course, some tricky places we need guidance and somebody who shows all these 120 people, where are we going? Like if there's like many different kind of rhythms or melodies going like this, like Mahler and Strauss made these really complicated, tricky places, then we need a conductor, of course.
You've been doing some conducting yourself and your father as well. How can a person that is not familiar with it imagine the complexity of the role? Because you need to understand how so many different instruments work and how they can kind of work with each other and what each musician is capable of doing so that it all comes together into one sound and one experience for the audience.
Like a conductor, first of all, have to perform the rehearsals. And at the rehearsal, you figure out a lot of these questions. How fast can we go? How soft can these people play? And also into this mix, you can try to figure out how much of my personality or my wishes can we put into this. And if you put too much, then the ensemble get confused, or they don't understand what's going on, or they get frustrated because it's too soft or too fast. So it's a difficult job to be a conductor too. So I really respect conductors.
So to go back to when you arrived here, you on the one side were struggling to find the right soap at the supermarket. On the other side, you're joining this new orchestra, practicing. And then how soon after getting here did you actually have your first performance in Japan?
Well, in Hyogo, we had like 3 weeks with just getting to know each other, and we practiced some of the pieces we were going to premiere with. And we also had a CD recording. That was one of the first things we did. I don't know if that's still for sale, but you can search up Hyogo Performing Arts Center. I think it's Smetana, Moldau.
Okay.
Or no, it's not. It's Dvorak Ninth Symphony. Here in Japan they call it Shinsekai, the new World Symphony. That's one of the first CDs. And also another funny point was that in this orchestra we had all these different kind of what do you call it? Not teachers, but like really famous musicians from around the world came and trained us, like were our teachers the first couple of months.
Oh.
So my teacher those 3 weeks was Adolf Herset. He was principal trumpet in Chicago Symphony, maybe the most famous trumpet player in the world at that time. And poor me, I really didn't know who he was. I was not starstruck. I was kind of, who is this? And this is a little bit embarrassing to admit. Sorry. And but during these 3 weeks, I really learned what he was, and really, I'm so happy now that I managed to play with him these 3 weeks.
Maybe it made it easier that you were not starstruck and that you were just able to absorb the teaching without being intimidated by the person.
Mm. So this is also like a funny backstory of my life. I've been just like floating down this river and didn't really decide where to go. I was just going places where the fate decided for me where to go.
So that fate brought you to Japan, but originally only for a 2-year contract.
Yes.
In Hyogo. You started right away with practicing and CD recordings, and then your premiere. But now it's like over 20 years later, and you're still here. So what happened during those 2 years that made you want to kind of stay longer?
Well, as for all foreigners in Japan, there is a girl involved. So I fell in love with the girl, and she fell in love with me. She got a job in Kyoto first, and then I met all these members in Kyoto Symphony, and they were really nice people. And they came and listened to the concerts in Hyogo. And then when they had an opening for second trumpet in 2007, I applied and I got the job. So then I started in Kyoto Symphony in June 2007.
You were saying earlier that when you were still in Norway, you were basically touring Europe, and it was very difficult to find an open place. I imagine each orchestra has 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 seats per instrument maximum, depending on what they need. And some of these seats might be occupied for a very long time. How was it? How would you consider that opportunity opening in Kyoto? Was it the 1 in a million, so to say, a chance to join that orchestra?
And not in 1 million, because like most people work for between 30 and 40 years. In Kyoto, there is like 4 positions. So then you will have an opening statistically every 7th year or something. So it's not so rare to have an opening position for a trumpet player. But there are many trumpet players who want to get that one job. So for example, on this audition, I think there were 80 participants who came to this audition in 2007. And then you play like the first couple of pieces, and then they narrow it down to like 10 people. Then you play a little bit more, and then maybe 3 people, and then in the end there's one left. And then that one person is playing in front of the whole orchestra and need to get 50% of the votes to be accepted into the orchestra.
So the existing members have a say into who joins and who doesn't.
Yes.
What are these orchestras and the committee that is doing the audition looking for? I imagine everyone that is applying there is a skilled trumpet player. What makes a difference for you to be selected over all the 79 other people?
Well, now we have a story from when I was playing on auditions, and now the later years I've been sitting on the other side of the table listening to people that want to become member in the orchestra. And then when I was playing, I had all these theories about what they might like and what can make me get this job. Like And then, of course, we discussed this with all these other 80 people who's doing this audition, you know, and then that becomes a little bit crazy. Too many opinions, or what do you call this? When you're imagining yourself something that doesn't happen.
I see what you mean.
Too much
assumptions.
Assumptions and too much drama.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ended up behind the table, it's basically you're listening for just really basically somebody who can play, and somebody who can play well, and somebody who has like an idea about sound color, like what kind of sound do you want to make, and actually what comes out in the other end. If they match, then you can see a happy trumpet player, you know. And also this person need to like fit into this group of people that's already there. So that's just like basically, what was it? 4 things?
Yeah, 4 things. Yeah. And so that's the deciding factor. And you made it through, and you kind of got accepted in Kyoto. And for you, that was the beginning then of a new chapter. How was it very different for you to move from that performing arts center to Kyoto? Did you see differences there, or was it basically just joining a new orchestra and continuing this work in this environment here in Japan?
First of all, it was more work and less rehearsal again. Because this orchestra in Hyogo Performing Arts Center is like a training orchestra for young talents. So we had a lot of rehearsals. And then in Kyoto Symphony, we went a little bit more back to what I was used to in Norway. So more concerts, less rehearsals, and a little bit less paid. Because in Hyogo, we had this really good deal with almost free apartment. And everything was like covered. We can just relax and practice a lot. But in Kyoto, I really had to work hard. So that was one of the big differences. And also in Kyoto, one thing I should mention that, again, not so many people could speak English.
Oh.
But I was so lucky that many people in Kyoto Symphony has studied in Germany, and they could speak German. And I could also speak German. So then we had like a kind of a third language.
You mentioned German as well when you talked about the Hyogo Performing Arts Center Orchestra. Is that a common language in orchestras to kind of study and learn for people from around the world?
Well, the most of the most famous classic music is coming from Germany, like Mozart and Brahms and Bruckner and all these big composers. Everything is German music. So then in the score in our music, the descriptions in Mahler symphonies are mostly in German, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that brings up an interesting question for me. When you said that suddenly in Kyoto they spoke a lot less English, a little bit of German, but still, I imagine you had started studying Japanese too. But how do you talk about the intricacies of music? You talked about sound color. That probably requires a very specific vocabulary to describe what you want to do, how you want it to come out. And when you have these conversations all day long during rehearsals, always the conductor, how was it for you to communicate with the rest of the members and understand what you want to express and what they want of you when you were talking about music specifically?
Well, in an orchestra rehearsal, we don't talk so much with the other members about this. We listen to the conductor. And then the major conductors I remember from when I came to Kyoto was Naoto Otomo. And he spoke English when he saw I was confused. He can speak perfect English. And then the new chief conductor, Hirogami-san, he didn't really talk about sound colors directly. He also didn't talk about intonation or rhythm or something. He just asked us like, hey, do you like ramen? Or if you drinking one night, what do you drink? Do you drink whiskey or do you drink shochu? And he tried to challenge us to just change the idea about the sound. This is not ramen, this solo should be a little bit more like Somen. And then you can see the imagination just bubbling up at everybody's faces, and they suddenly can change their idea about the sound just because the conductor is speaking about something else.
Which makes it very interesting for me, because I would find that very confusing, because if you tell me, okay, this needs to sound a little bit more like Somen, it's a very abstract concept. So I imagine that everyone could have a very different interpretation of what it means like to sound like Somen. How do you kind of then get on the same page? You have the imaginations bubbling, but are they bubbling in the same level?
Well, like if we do an experiment now, like if you have tried this ever, like if you have 2 glasses in front of you, one is milk and one is Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And you close your eyes and you think about milk and you drink Coca-Cola. It's really like your senses and your brain explodes, because it's totally different from what you expect to drink. And kind of with music, you can do the same with the sound color. If you think about the deep, really deep koi black ramen that has a really dark brown color, and you eat this is like really a mouthful. But and then the sound color is like deep and heavy, and has a lot of deep overtones. This goes a little bit technical, but all notes have a big spectrum of all, not only one note, it's a mix of all kind of notes. And if you then think about Somen is not really, doesn't really have a sauce, does it? This has something.
A very light
sauce.
So you dip it into the.
Yeah. So, and also you take it from like a bowl full of ice or something. So some of the water comes in the soup. So it's almost no taste. It's just white, and it's just.
So the homework from that conductor was for you to go out and try all the noodle types of Japan.
Yeah,
so
maybe
you can get all the references when he's explaining to you how you should play or try to play the music.
Yeah, but I think it was a really good lesson from him, that you try to think a little bit more abstract when you make music, and not go too much into the details, because then you kind of feeding the wrong brain. So. This is also one of the things I a little bit wanted to talk about later when we're talking about teaching in Japan. Like, you should feed the right brain to perform better. Yeah. And this conductor was absolutely doing that. Yeah.
Talking about performances, what were some of the most impactful performances for you as part of that orchestra?
For the orchestra I'm in now, Kyoto Symphony. Well, every week has a really deep impact on me, because I really go into it and work hard, and then everything becomes really serious for me. Like, last week we played an opera stage, like a concert version of Così fan tutte opera of Mozart. It's not so much to do for trumpet, but it was really, I really enjoyed it. It was so fun to play, and like the whole concept, this new kind of way of doing an opera. It was so fun to watch and sit on the stage and be a part of this. But also like something really hard. You're working really hard for something that's on the limit to be too difficult. That's also really memorable. In January, we had a concert with Copland's Symphony No. 3. That's one of the hardest things I ever played. And this was also American music. So we also have a American tuba player in our orchestra, Mr. Peter Link, and he telling me, "Hey Harald, you have to play louder. Can't hear you." So I was really working hard that weekend, playing as loud as I could.
You just described it as one of the hardest to play. What makes it so difficult for people that don't necessarily know so much about it?
Well, first of all, it's many high notes. And it was also written for one of the best orchestras in the world at that time, for Boston Symphony Orchestra, I think it was. Or maybe New York, or for both. But anyway, this is like the top notes, like top, how do you say this?
Musicians of the time.
Yeah, this is like the ultimate challenge for a trumpet player, I think, for like stamina, for endurance, and for many, many high notes. And there is like not so much chance to relax. So then, first of all, how to rehearse this. On the rehearsals, we do many of these hard places, like not one time, not two times, maybe 3 or 4. And then you have like a 3-hour rehearsal where you play all the hard places like 4 times. Like coming home after work, you don't want to talk with anybody. You just want to go and have a beer and sleep early, you know. Some of those weeks.
How long is an actual performance when you perform this on stage? How long do you play for?
Well, this symphony was around 1 hour, I think. And then normal, pretty hard symphony is like 1 hour. Yeah.
How much does the space that you're playing in matter? I imagine if you're playing in the Kyoto City or Orchestra Hall, you get very familiar with the acoustics of the room. You know that maybe to get the same note, you need to blow the trumpet in a specific way. But then you familiarize yourself with this, but then you start going to play around Japan in different halls that are bigger, smaller, different layouts. How much does it affect how you play the same song?
Well, the first thing you notice is what sound is coming back from the hall. Like we like a trumpet or like any instrument, it's not like an electronic box. You can turn the volume up to like 5, and then this sound is coming out. Like you play, and then if you can't hear your own sound, you maybe play a little bit louder. And if you hear too much of yourself, you play a little bit softer. And then the whole balance in the orchestra or in the section is like getting really rough and really out. And then you need to do 2 things, like figure out how to just play like normal. And then you play like normal. And then there may be the conductor or other members telling you, hey, this is too loud. Or you figure out yourself, hey, this is not enough, you need to play more. So you adjust to the room like this. And also there's like, some halls have different characteristics. Like a Kyoto Symphony is like a really long shoebox. So in order to reach the last customers on the last row, you know, they paid as much as the people closer to the orchestra. They need to hear what you do too. So then you have to play a little bit louder maybe, or a little bit more clearly what you want to play, because the distance make all the sounds become a little bit dull or unclear.
Aside from the Kyoto hall, do you have any favorite halls that you like to play at because you like the acoustics of the shape or design of the room?
Like all the halls. Of course, I like the hall I started with here in Japan, the Hyogo Performing Arts Center Orchestra Hall. And I like the Symphony Hall here in Osaka. I think it's just called the Symphony Hall. That's kind of the shoebox, but the opposite way over Kyoto. The shoebox is going out on the sides. So then I have to play this miso ramen sound, you know, this little bit deeper sound. And last September we were on a tour. We played in 8 different halls in all Japan. Then we had many funny experiences. That was like changing sound every day. So then we need to just follow the list I just told you. Just play like always. Figure out what that is that day. And then wait for instructions from the conductor.
You play with the same group a lot, so you familiarize yourself, you get to know each other. You joined that when a position opened up. How often do the members change, and how much do you get to play with that troupe that you kind of now know by now how everyone plays and what they're capable, and it kind of becomes like a symbiosis?
Well, we in the Kyoto Symphony Orchestra, we have like a system of principals and sub-principals and the tutti players. And then the principal and the sub-principal sometimes changes. It's not like a set rule that all the principals always play with each other. There's always some kind of rotation. And then now we everybody played together for over 10 years. I think we know each other. So it's really fun. We really adapt to each other really well, I think.
You mentioned principal. You are now principal, but you joined as a second trumpet.
Yeah.
How does it actually change in practice for someone that I have rarely been to any symphony or orchestra? So I know you have 2, 3, 4 trumpet players standing next to each other playing, but I cannot really make the difference between who does what and who contributes what. What are the different roles, and how is your role now as a principal? How does it change?
Well, mostly the principal is playing all the solos or the melodies in the brass section, and then all the highest notes, and then the second and third or fourth trumpet is like supporting this or making harmonies. So, and it's really difficult to explain for a non-musician, but like, for example, if you have a band and you have a singer, and some of the other singers are not singing the melody, but they're like singing the chorus in the background or playing other instruments. This is like the biggest difference, I think. The principal is like doing the melody, and the others are supporting him, or they have their own melodies sometimes.
What does the landscape of orchestras and symphonies look like today in Japan? Are there many? Are they working well? I don't know if in Europe maybe there are differences where, I don't know if there are challenges with filling the halls or not. Are younger generations still interested in this more classical music and coming to attend the shows? So what does it look like here in Japan?
I think we are facing the same problems here in Japan as in Europe. It's mostly customers are the elderly people who grew up with classic music on TV and in the radio. So they are majority of our customers. And then orchestras in Japan and in Europe too, they're working really hard now to attract the younger generations. And in Kyoto, we have something that's called Orchestra Discovery, where we invite comedians to come and be the speakers or the people introducing all the music. And then they have all these questions too, like you have, and like why does the sound come out there when you blow there, and like it's really funny. And also the new chief conductor, Nodoka Okisawa-san, is now leading the new Orchestra Discovery series, and she is like teaching the audience about all this kind of music, and what, like, they have their own subject one day, and then we have this subject this time and teaching you about this, and then a lot of kids come and listen, and so we're trying hard to get the younger generation interested in music. So I hope I will not be out of work soon.
Is there an attempt as well to introduce different music genres into orchestra? We talked with Tove Björk on the topic of kabuki, and she was explaining that kabuki is now doing performances based on stories from anime or manga, to kind of bring in also the younger generation to see like a kabuki play of their favorite manga. Is there something similar happening as well, where orchestras will have a concert of, I don't know, the soundtrack of One Piece or an anime like that?
Yeah, we do that, and sometimes we have we play the soundtrack of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to make sure the music suits the movie. And also one thing we did recently in Rome Theatre is something called play theatre, where we have all this kind of music mixed together into a story, or the MC is like reading a book, and then we put music that suits this book into the concert, into this concept. So many similar things as this, yeah.
So similar challenges as well than in Europe, but you said for now you are not out of a job, and hopefully people will start attending and coming to listen to these new interpretations and as well as the classical pieces. But one thing that you have started doing as well on site is teaching over the years, transmitting knowledge about playing like a miso ramen or a shio ramen. I want to talk a little bit more about that. How did you get into teaching? At what point did you kind of decide, I want to transmit everything I've learned so far?
Well, actually, when I entered the academy in Norway, I didn't enter as a wannabe musician. I was early told that I was never going to be a musician because I was not good enough. So then my first idea was to become a music teacher, like a brass band conductor, like my father, and just have this hobby as work. And then, so the first couple of years after graduating my first degree was actually teaching music. So then I was teaching in the music school and conducting all these brass bands around my city. So that made me interested in like how to explain for this 9-year-old child how to make sound in a trumpet. And to be able to teach something, you have to understand yourself what you're doing. And that's difficult.
That goes to what you were talking about during the auditions as well. If someone is able to choose a specific sound and able to execute and kind of know why they are making the sound and understand really the process from start to finish.
So for me, I actually in the beginning I stole some points from a Japanese method that's called the Suzuki method for violin. Then they're just making sounds just with their mouth first. In Norway, we this rhythm is like a ta 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 tan tan ta 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 tan tan, and in Norway we said attekate noa, and they do this gesture with their hand, and then they just use a cardboard violin in the beginning. So that's the beginning of the Suzuki method. So I was like copying this on the trumpet, and we had just a mouthpiece. We just did this buzzing sound, or just a long note. So that was the beginning of the trumpet, and I didn't take the established method at that time. I just tried to make up something new, and I had really a lot of fun, really fun with the kids, and I taught a lot of kids how to play the trumpet. So my beginning as a teacher was to teach beginners, like from the beginning, from nothing.
Just so get started.
Yeah. So that was my main profession before I came to Japan. I was conducting brass bands with the older kids too, but never adults or amateurs. So I was just playing around, having fun, and got paid.
So how did that opportunity come about in Japan to get back into teaching, but this time around some more advanced students already?
Yeah. The first opportunity came when I got my job in Kyoto. Then I think Doshisha Koko in North Kyoto asked me to come and conduct a Norwegian program. And then I was suddenly standing there again, conductor for a school orchestra. And I couldn't speak Japanese yet. But they said, no problem, just speak English. So I was having rehearsals for a year in English, and then slowly learning Japanese and teaching. all these kids, also other instruments, violins and horns and cellos, how to play. And then I kind of got my teaching energy back and started getting students.
When you started seeing those students, they already had some basics of musical education. Did you notice any differences between how they were taught and what knowledge they acquired about music and how to play versus what you learned when you were back in Norway?
Yeah. I think in Japan, they're focusing a lot on details and making everything really perfect. And they have this rule, if you do a mistake or if you really want to learn something, you have to repeat it like 100 times. And that's really, really weird for me as a Norwegian, where we kind of start in the other end, like start with the emotion, like just make a sound and have fun and then find something that's not too difficult, and then you work on that, and then you go to the next level. But here, for example, in these school orchestras, they take new students who never play the instruments and then say, here is Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony. You have to play this on the concert in 9 months. And many students are so bright and working so hard, they have no problem doing this. But I don't know if they really enjoy it. It's maybe just really hard work, and they enjoy it because they succeed in the hard work, not because they enjoy the music. I'm not really sure. But the approach is really different.
How does it then affect you coming in as a new teacher? You said the first year you were kind of figuring things out, but eventually I imagine you want to bring in your methods. You have your personal ideas of what you think it's important for students to learn and remember when they study music. How did you start bringing in this, and what did you decide to focus your education on here in Japan?
Well, my focus here in Japan has been to make the students think a little bit more about sound color. Like, what do they want to, and how do they get it? Like, one particular problem I noticed when I was teaching people in the academy, they think they were finished playing basics or practicing basics, like the fundamental stuff of producing sound. They think they were finished with that when they entered the academy. So they can only concentrate on just playing music at the academy. But then I said, no, this is not enough. You need to fix these basic problems before you can start making music, because, there is something wrong here, or not wrong, but it's like you can come to this level, but it will be really difficult to go to the next and next step, because this really doesn't work. So that was one problem. And also this focus on the small details. So they practice so hard and so strict on the details that they forget about the emotion and the music.
Did that inspire you to eventually bring in the noodle recipes from your own conductor into your teaching methods as a way to connect with the students?
Well, this works on professional musicians, but not so well on students.
Oh, interesting.
They just get confused and like, what? What are you talking about? So this abstract thinking, I think we have to be a little bit careful with the students. But one thing I'm trying to focus on is like, you have to put your knowledge in a deep place. You have to put it in the brain, on a place where you can find it when you get stressed out. Like, a lot of musicians struggle really with nervousness, being nervous, and when they go to a concert situation or an audition, they forget everything. Or they're shaking so much they can't produce a good sound. And I had this problem when I was auditioning. But somehow I got the job and I figured it out. And then later I learned what happened and how could I do this. And the secret was deep learning, peak performance. Actually, this is a title I stole from a friend who wrote a book about this. And it's about trying to practice with the right brain and put your knowledge into the unconscious part of your brain. So like, I can think about what to have for dinner or what I should do after work, and I can play a symphony. I can use these kind of two brains at the same time now. And that's one of the things I'm trying to teach the students.
Because they have a tendency to mix everything, and they're not able to, or they get overwhelmed by these conflicting thoughts.
Yeah, and they use this surface of their consciousness to concentrate on the small details of the music, and they're like practicing really hard on not doing mistakes. So then they can't put the knowledge into this deep space in the brain.
So focus on not making mistakes and getting a specific sound perfectly without kind of focusing on why we are making this sound and how does it fit into the big picture of the whole play.
Well, now I'm kind of contradicting myself, because I'm telling them to focus on making like a good sound, or focus on what they're doing. But it's more about trying to make the body make the sound, or like your inner, the deep, what do you say, unconsciousness, deep consciousness to do the work, and like learn it by heart, not by repetitions. So maybe I'm difficult to understand now how I explain this in English.
I see where you're going with this, which kind of makes me curious about the outcome. These students, they learn music in different ways in different countries, focusing on different aspects of things. Does that lead to a situation where now, as an experienced musician, if you were to put together an orchestra of only Japanese musician and let's say only Norwegian musician, and you are blindfolded and listening to the music, are you able to hear like the different sound colors and kind of guess, oh, these are probably the Japanese musicians because they have a tendency to focus on these aspects of the song, and these are maybe the Norwegians because they focus on that aspect of the music?
Well, I wish I could give you a simple answer on that question, but I don't want to generalize people either. So, but you probably could, without saying too much, like focus on details and not on the big picture. It's maybe a big difference from students here in Japan and outside country. Yeah.
You've been here now for over 20 years. How do you look back on your musical career here as being part for such a long period of that orchestra? Have you ever thought about, oh, maybe you want to join the Tokyo Orchestra, or you want to go overseas to the Chicago Symphony you mentioned earlier as being one of the big ones in the world as well, or back to Europe? Have these crossed your mind, or do you feel like you found your musical community here in Kansai?
Well, it depends. I actually have variations every day. Sometimes I love my job and sometimes I hate it. But after all, I'm really happy to be here in Japan and in Kyoto. And some days I wish I was back in Norway or played in another orchestra, but like that's just like a puff of air, and it goes away. And of course, everybody think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. But I've been in the game so long time now. I know that if you just change orchestra, change country, you meet the same problems, and you meet yourself in every situation as yourself being a part of the problem. So that's the only thing I can change. I can't change other people.
So staying here, working with your orchestra and improving things, better, bigger performances, new pieces, different interpretations is equally fulfilling. And on those difficult days, you have a very particular hobby that you like to turn to, which is sailing.
Oh yeah, yes, sailing. Yeah.
Sailing. I heard or I read a statistic that in Norway a lot of people own at least a small boat to kind of go around through the fjords on the coastline. Is that something you had picked up already back home and you brought to Japan as a hobby?
Oh yeah, actually, from when I was 9 years old, our family bought a boat, but my mother wanted a cabin on the mountain. And you know, in Norway, most families have either like a friend's house they can borrow on the mountain, or they have their own cabin on the mountain, or some people have a boat, or they join in some other families who have a boat. So it's like the boat or the cabin. That's
you
like
pick one.
Yeah, and some people don't have either, and then they go to Gran Canaria or go to the Spain or Greece or something in the summer. But my family had a boat. And since I was 9 years old, we were spending almost all the free weekends and the summer holidays at the boat, in the boat, and traveling all over South Norway and to Sweden.
Wow. Yeah. So when you came to Japan, I imagine you were longing for that as well. Probably one of the things you missed from home, but maybe not the easiest thing to get into, right? There are probably different regulations for sailing, maybe licenses you need to get, and you need to get a boat as well. Can you tell me a little bit about the process you had to go through to start sailing in Japan?
Well, I can tell you first more about the process in my mind. Actually, after I started studying music, I didn't have time to go to the boat with my parents anymore. So, of course, I missed it, but that was like a part of my life that just disappeared. But then my parents died. First my father in 2014, and then my mother in 2021. And then I actually got an inheritance from my parents. And I was thinking what to do with this. And then after I joined the Friends Sailing, the penny just dropped. Hey, I can buy a boat, and I can teach this tradition from our family to my kids. My father's family were all fishermen, and they had their own fishing company, fishing all over Scandinavia and to Iceland and selling the fish down in Europe. So for me, this was like I could honor my parents suddenly by buying a boat, and they're bringing my kids and also bringing all my friends. You know, I had many hobbies up through the times, and I remember this boat thing is like you can bring friends and you can have parties and you can go sailing and you can be out there and feel like you're almost dying, and then come back and have stories to tell with your friends. Yeah, or stories you don't want to tell.
That stay on the boat.
Yeah. But the process of getting a boat here in Japan was not so difficult, actually. I was like browsing on the internet and found a couple of boats that I liked, and took a couple of my friends, and we also ride motorbike together. So we drove around the Seto Naikai and had a look at many boats one summer. And that same summer, I got my license, my boat license here in Japan. You need a license to actually
before you can even buy
drive a boat.
Okay.
Not to buy. You can buy one without license, but to drive the boat, you need a license. So then I got help from a friend in Nishinomiya and got my license there. And just 1 week before I picked up the boat in Shodoshima, so decided for a sailing yacht, a 40 feet sailing yacht.
How complicated is it to get that license? Is there like a lot of tests, or is it just general knowledge you need to learn about the regulations of boats circulation in harbors in Japan that may be different, and kind of what are the kind of things that are expected of you for the license?
There I was actually surprised because it was exactly the same as in Norway. I actually got like a kind of a license in Norway when I was just 15 years old. And you don't really need a license, or you didn't need a license in Norway until recently. But I had that license. And then when I started studying the the same material here in Japan. It was like exactly the same, and I remember everything. So just to find those small details, and like this test method here in Japan too is like standardized, and the words are really similar. Like, what is the most accurate answer to this question, and then you have 4 alternatives. And then the next question is like, what is the most inaccurate answer? And like, if you read this a little bit too fast and you're not native English like me, then you might do a small mistake.
Do they have the test in English in Japan?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
So you can do this next week if you want to.
I might do that.
Yeah. And
this is actually quite
I think you can fail 9 times before they
say you're not going to be a captain.
Yeah, or they say you have to go to school. But anyway, I passed this test and picked up the boat next week.
So you don't even need to go to school. You can buy a book and study by yourself and just sign up to take the test.
Yes.
Which brings up the big question of like, if you do that and you have the license, but you've never actually been on a boat, that might create a whole series of issues.
No, because the test includes a driving test.
Okay.
Yeah. They put you in a boat and the instructor tells you what to do. And he don't have other boats in the river where they perform this test. So he's showing up, this is a boat, like a picture of a boat. Okay, he's coming there. What do you do now? And you have to explain. And then you have to understand the rules of the sea. Like, if the boat is coming from the right, you have to go behind him or let him go first.
Are there different licenses for if you want to have a sailing boat or a motorboat?
No, it's the same. But here in Japan, you have kind of 2 different licenses now. If you want to go really close to the shore, it's a 5-mile limit. That's called Nikyu. Or if you want to sail almost unlimited, 20 miles away from the shore, then you can sail all the way to Okinawa if you have the right boat. Then that's called the IQ. I have that IQ now. Yeah.
So you get your license, and 5 days later you go to Shodoshima. You pick up that boat that you found with your friends, and since I've been on many sailing trips, is it easy to sail around Japan and to just kind of make a plan? Oh, next week I want to sail from Osaka to Kagoshima, and you can just dock there, or do you need to? How does it all work?
Well, that should maybe be on a different podcast, but
I'm sure we
it's
could
a long
go
story.
Yeah.
No. The first thing you have to check is the weather, of course. The weather in Japan can be horrendous sometimes, and if you go in the inland sea, you don't have these big waves, but you can have really strong winds. So you need to check the weather, of course, and then you need to check the currents in the straits. And then at some of those narrow channels, for example, in Naruto Strait, the water is moving so fast, you get this whirlwind, this small tornadoes, water tornadoes. I don't know what the English word is. Whirlpools. Yeah. And if you have a small boat and end up in that one,
you can't get out.
You go like this until the tide turns the other way. So you have to be careful about that. And then if you need to stop at one of these marinas, then you might need to call ahead and do a reservation. But last time we were sailing, I actually just hooked up to like a fishing marina, and we just asked the other fishermen if we could stay there for the night, and they said yes, no problem, just stay.
Wow.
That was a new experience for me.
So you decided to get the boat with the inheritance as a way to honor your parents and kind of your upbringing too. And you said that it leads to great opportunities to have stories to share with friends and such. What are some of the unique trips and perspectives that this has given you on Japan once you've been able to sail the coastline and kind of explore and look at the country you kind of now call home in a different way?
Well, like we always bring friends sailing, like day trips, and then all kinds of people come, people who you know from before or people you never met before. So it's a great opportunity to meet new people. But like a recurring problem is people don't bring enough clothes. Like it's summer or it's like pretty warm air, but out there when it's blowing, it's really cold.
Mm-hmm.
So at many occasions, I've been lending my clothes to people, and then they bring them home and forget to give them back to me. So I had to go a couple of times to shop and buy new clothes. And then suddenly they remember 1 year later and comes back to my boat.
I'll bring it on the next trip.
Yeah, that's one thing. And then, of course, people get seasick. And what do you do then? And they try to not puke, but eventually they do. And that's sad. But we try to avoid it.
So sailing is a way of connecting with people, of making new acquaintances and bringing them into unique situations where they might freeze or get very unwell, but it all makes for good memories in the end.
But I have many musician friends. So always when we have a sail, we go out and either they play on the boat when we are sailing or we have a party in the harbor when we come back. And I actually just recently uploaded a movie to YouTube. Maybe you already saw that, where we have a sunset sail in Nishinomiya. And when the sail ends with a fireworks show, and my good friend Steve Miller is playing the accordion, and people dancing at the dock. So that's...
I can't really beat that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Great memories.
It's a great memories, yeah.
Harald, we covered a lot of topics today, from your journey to Japan, your work at the orchestra and how it works, musical education and sailing. Is there anything that you would have liked to bring up that I didn't ask you about that we didn't really get into today?
Yeah, I was thinking about, I got like a list from you about questions. And then I was thinking... really hard about one thing. Why was this transition from Norway to Japan so easy for me? Like that was one of your questions. Like many people who come from certain countries, they find it really hard to live in Japan and they just move back again. And then I've been asking myself, why was this so easy for me? And then, of course, you can't generalize this into countries. This country, these people, they can't fit into Japan because, and I don't like to put people in these
boxes.
Yeah. So I figured out that I grew up in a family who are thinking a lot like people in Japan, maybe, and then this moral and these rules in Japan was not so. It was not so strict for me. It was like, it was normal. I grew up with these kind of rules and should be nice to each other and respect your neighbor and clean up around you. And then also you had the questions about my trumpet teacher at the academy.
Yeah.
One of his advice was to never sit back and think, I'm good enough now. Like, you should always try to improve little bit every day.
Never just sit down and feel like you've made it. There's always some aspect that you can kind of get 1% better.
So my teacher at the academy, Jan Fredrik Christiansen, he was principal trumpet in Oslo Philharmonic. So he said this, never sit down and think, now I'm good enough. I can relax and enjoy life. So you have to try to continuously improve. And in Japan, you have a really fine word for that. It's called kaizen. To try to improve every day, little bit. So you don't need to build any new bridge or a house or build a mountain in one day. You just try to little bit improve every day.
It's a matter of having the right mindset. And it seems like your family values, your educational background kind of really set you up for success here in Japan and for the career you've had. And now you're transmitting this to your students and sharing your stories. Yeah. Harald, it was really fascinating to have you and hear your many insights. Thank you very much for coming and sharing with our audience. And hopefully people will come and listen to you play the trumpet at one of your upcoming concerts. The links will be in the description so they can find you, reach out and maybe see where they can get the next tickets. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Thank you for sticking with us all the way till the end. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the podcast. It helps us improve the show and bring you more in-depth conversations from Japan. Take care and see you next time.